In the vast expanse of the Galactic Federation's most prestigious institution, the Interstellar Academy of Sciences and Arts, IASA, a day arrived that would be etched into history, one that would leave alien species across the galaxy questioning their very existence and send ripples of chaos through the delicate order of interspecies relations. It was Bring Your Pet to Class Day. At first glance, this might sound like a harmless event, a chance for different species to share their unique animals and foster interspecies understanding. And for most species, it was. The Flarns brought their sentient clouds of sparkling gas, the Aquarians showed off their glowing water spirits, and even the Rockins managed to get their pet crystals to perform a breathtaking light display. But then came the humans. Humans, those bipedal creatures from the perilous planet Earth. The species that clawed its way through the galaxy with an unparalleled stubbornness and an uncanny ability to befriend creatures that, by all logic, should have devoured them long ago. When the announcement for Bring Your Pet to Class Day made its way to the human dormitories, the response was nothing short of uniquely human. Yes, Sarah Johnson, a sophomore studying xenobiology, exclaimed, "Finally, I can bring Mr. Snuggles." Her roommate, Serac, a gaseous being from Nebula Prime, floated uneasily beside her. "Sarah, my dear, I fear you misunderstand the assignment. We are to bring pets, not eldritch horrors from the dark void of nightmares." Sarah blinked in confusion, her face a mixture of bafflement and amusement. "But Mr. Snuggles is my pet. He's my cat." Serac's gaseous form rippled in exasperation. If he had eyes, they would have rolled. "Sarah, your cat, as you call it, is a predator, clawed, fanged, and a hunter by nature. But he's cute, right?" Sarah cooed, entirely missing the point. Meanwhile, in the boys' dormitory, Jake Martinez was having a similarly perplexing conversation with his roommate, Miko, a sentient fungal colony. "Check it out," Jake grinned, holding up a leash. "I'm bringing Rex to class tomorrow." Miko's spores flared up in alarm. "Jake, my friend, I highly recommend you rethink this. Rex is not exactly the ideal pet." Jake, undeterred, shot back. "What do you mean? Rex is a good boy, aren't you, buddy?" He turned to a corner of the room where a massive, muscular creature with a square jaw and ears that flopped adorably sat. Rex, the 180-pound Rottweiler, let out a booming bark that sent Miko's spores scattering in terror. "See? He's excited." Jake beamed, oblivious to the fungus's distress. As the news spread throughout the human quarters, excitement and mischief buzzed in the air. Emily Chun, not wanting to be left out, decided to bring her ball python to class, much to the horror of her Slytherin roommate, who couldn't understand why anyone would willingly keep a noodle of death as a pet. Carlos Rodriguez brought his tarantula, Fluffy, while Aisha Patel proudly presented her pet rabbit, Thumper, though she conveniently neglected to mention Thumper's unusual habit of chewing through solid steel. The following morning, as students from every corner of the galaxy filed into the grand auditorium for the highly anticipated pet showcase, there was an air of excited expectation. The non-human students chattered enthusiastically about their otherworldly, often translucent pets. The human contingent, however, was notably quiet, many lugging large crates or wrestling with leashes connected to invisible creatures. Professor Zill, a gelatinous being of considerable intelligence, though his fashion sense left much to be desired, stood at the podium, his pseudopods trembling with eagerness. "Welcome, students, to our inaugural Bring Your Pet to Class Day," he boomed happily. "We'll start with presentations from Sector A. Glupner, please come forward with your pet." A shy nebulite floated to the stage, trailing strands of glowing mist. "This is Sparkle," Glupner mumbled, his voice barely audible. "She enjoys floating and existing." The audience responded with the appropriate ohs and ahs as Sparkle continued to float, quite impressively, one might add. Next was Zix 427, a robotic entity from the Cybernetic Collective. "This is Unit 8675309, Zeeb 427 stated in its mechanical monotone. "It excels at advanced calculations and occasionally plays soothing dial-up sounds." The human audience stifled giggles while the other aliens nodded with approval at the advanced technology. As the presentations went on, the humans started to fidget. Sarah Johnson kept shushing her crate, which was growling ominously from within. Jake Martinez was having a hard time keeping his Rottweiler, Rex, from dragging him out of his seat, the massive dog's nose twitching furiously at the myriad alien smells wafting through the air. Finally, Professor Zill's pseudopods waved toward the humans. "Ah yes, our friends from Earth. Sarah Johnson, would you like to begin?" Sarah jumped to her feet and made her way to the stage, her crate meowing loudly in protest. With dramatic flair, she opened the door, and out stepped Mr. Snuggles. Now, to Sarah, Mr. Snuggles was a lovable bundle of fur, full of affection and the occasional violence. But to the rest of the auditorium, he was a sleek, fearsome predator with razor-sharp claws and eyes that spoke of death. "This is Mr. Snuggles," Sarah said, beaming with pride. "He's a cat. He enjoys napping, chasing laser pointers, and, well, disemboweling small creatures for fun." The room went eerily silent. Then pandemonium broke loose. The Avens, recalling ancient predators from their homeworld, shot into the air in sheer panic. The rhizomes fainted in unison. Even the usually stoic Rockins seemed visibly rattled. Meanwhile, Mr. Snuggles, unfazed by the chaos he had stirred, calmly sat down, raised one leg, and began grooming himself, fully aware that in this room, he was the undisputed apex predator. Professor Zill's gelatinous body wobbled in what could only be described as panic. "And Miss Johnson," he stammered, "perhaps it would be best if you contained your pet." Sarah blinked in confusion. "But he's not doing anything. Look how cute he is." Just then, Mr. Snuggles stretched, showing off his sharp teeth in a yawn. The sight was enough to make several aliens collapse in fright. Next, Professor Zill shouted in a high-pitched, almost frantic tone, "Jake Martinez." Jake strode onto the stage with a grin, struggling to keep Rex, the massive Rottweiler, under control. Rex's tail wagged so vigorously that it caused a breeze strong enough to move a few nearby objects. "This is Rex," Jake announced, beaming with pride. "He's a Rottweiler. He enjoys playing fetch, guarding the house, and being a good boy." "Who's a good boy?" "You are." "Yes, you are." Rex, thrilled by the attention, barked so loudly that the sound waves rattled the air. Several gaseous beings near the front nearly lost cohesion, flickering as their forms destabilized. "Mr. Martinez," Professor Zill's voice wobbled, "your pet appears to be some sort of war beast?" Jake chuckled. "Nah, he's just a big softie. Watch this. Rex, shake." Rex lifted his huge paw, extending it toward the professor. Zill Black panicked, misinterpreting the gesture, and turned into a puddle, certain Rex was about to crush him. After a few moments, Zill reformed, shaking his gooey form as he made a mental note to reevaluate the admissions process for Deathworlders. The presentations continued, with each human's pet becoming more intimidating to the alien audience. Emily's ball python sent the Slytherin delegation into a full retreat, their members unable to comprehend why anyone would willingly associate with a creature that was essentially a mobile digestive system with murder on its mind. Carlos's tarantula, Fluffy, caused a diplomatic incident when a representative from the Arachnid Federation accused humans of cultural appropriation. It took hours of tense negotiation and an emergency peace summit to assure them that no, humans did not consider spiders their evolutionary relatives. However, it was Aisha's presentation that truly tipped the scale, though, to be fair, the aliens had no idea what a camel was, which was probably for the best. "This is Thumper," Aisha said, holding up her fluffy white rabbit. For a moment, the crowd of aliens relaxed. Finally, a normal pet, something harmless. Then, without warning, Thumper grew bored. With a swift flick of his hind legs, he launched himself from Aisha's arms and landed on the stage. Immediately, he began chewing through the solid titanium podium with alarming ease. "Oh no, Thumper, we talked about this," Aisha exclaimed, diving to stop him. But it was too late, the damage was done. The auditorium erupted into chaos. Aliens scrambled in every direction, shrieking in terror as the human pets barked, meowed, and hissed in confusion. Professor Zill, thoroughly defeated, slithered toward the nearest exit, giving up all pretense of maintaining control. As the echoes of chaos slowly died down and the dust settled in the now wrecked auditorium, the humans stood amidst the wreckage, still surrounded by their pets, who were either lounging or aimlessly wandering through the debris. Sarah, holding Mr. Snuggles in her arms, glanced around in bewilderment. "Was it something we said?" she wondered aloud. Jake, still battling with Rex, who was nearly dragging him across the floor, shrugged. "Beats me. I thought it went pretty well." Emily, noticing that her ball python had slithered away in the confusion, sighed as she spotted what appeared to be an alien tentacle dangling from its mouth. "Well, there goes my security deposit," she muttered, shaking her head. As they started to collect the loose pets and tidy up the remnants of the disaster, Carlos suddenly asked, "Hey, do you think, just maybe, our pets are a little intense for the rest of the galaxy?" The group paused for a beat, then, as if on cue, burst into laughter. With a collective shrug, they returned to the cleanup, the absurdity of the situation hitting them all at once. Meanwhile, in the high-ceilinged administrative offices of the Interstellar Academy of Sciences and Arts, an emergency meeting was taking place. Dean Xylophone, yes, his name was indeed Xylophone, and no, he didn't find it amusing when humans snickered every time, was struggling to maintain order among his staff. It was not going well. "Order! I demand order," he trumpeted, his vocal cords vibrating in a fashion that would have made actual xylophones jealous. "We must address the event at today's pet showcase." Professor Zill Black, still a bit shaken from his earlier reconstitution, raised one of his pseudopods. "Dean Xylophone incident is an understatement." equipment. It was a disaster, a calamity, an intergalactic catastrophe. Now, soothed Professor Chlorop, a sentient plant from the lush gardens of Ron Prime. I'm sure it wasn't that bad. The humans were simply showcasing their, unique cultural practices. Unique, sputtered Professor Neutronium, a being of dense matter from a world with crushing gravity. Did you see what that rabbit did to my reinforced chair? I designed that to withstand the gravitational forces of a collapsing star. Dean Xylophone sighed, a sound like a glockenspiel crashing down a flight of stairs. The real question is, what do we do now? Expelling the humans isn't an option. They're here on a prestigious diversity scholarship funded by the Galactic Council themselves. A thoughtful silence hung in the air, only broken by the distant sound of Rex barking joyfully as Jake apparently decided that the quad was the perfect place for an impromptu game of fetch. Professor Zill Black's form rippled as an idea surfaced. What if we created a separate class just for the humans? Something like a Deathworlders studies program. The room filled with murmurs of approval, the tension easing. An excellent suggestion, Zill Black, Dean Xylophone exclaimed, his enthusiasm returning. We'll develop a specialized curriculum tailored to our human students, something that accommodates their distinctive perspectives and, of course, their companions. Thus, the Deathworlder Integration in Xenobiological Harmony Program, or DIXH, pronounced DISH, much to the amusement of the humans, came into being. The next day, as the human students filed into their newly established classroom, complete with reinforced walls, airlocks, and other safety features, they were greeted by a cheerful holographic projection of Dean Xylophone. Greetings, students of Earth, and welcome to your newly tailored program. The Dean's hologram boomed enthusiastically. Here, you will learn how to integrate your, shall we say, unique cultural practices with the broader galactic society. Your first lesson: why disemboweling is considered quite rude in 7 out of 9 galactic sectors. The human students exchanged looks of confusion and amusement. Sarah Johnson, never one to hold back, raised her hand. Dean Xylophone, is this about Mr. Snuggles? Because honestly, he only disembowels for fun, not for any rudeness. The projection flickered, and Dean Xylophone's face conveyed a mix of horror and resignation. Yes, Miss Johnson, it is because of Mr. Snuggles, and Rex, and Fluffy, and especially Thumper. As the Dean began his lecture, the human students settled in, their various pets by their sides. Mr. Snuggles purred contentedly on Sarah's lap. Rex's massive tail thumped rhythmically against the reinforced floor, and in the ventilation ducts, Fluffy the tarantula was busy weaving a web that would leave xenobiologists scratching their heads for centuries to come. Just another typical day at the Interstellar Academy of Sciences and Arts, where humanity's brightest, along with their pets, navigated the complexities of intergalactic society, one alien freakout at a time. Months passed, and the DIXH program slowly began to show progress. The humans put in a good effort to understand why their beloved pets, considered completely normal back on Earth, were viewed as horrifying monstrosities by other species. Meanwhile, the aliens gradually began to view the human-pet relationship as less of a grotesque anomaly and more of a fascinating curiosity. There were, of course, plenty of amusing setbacks, like when Jake, trying to demonstrate how gentle Rex could be, set up a pet the puppy booth in the quad. It went reasonably well, until Rex got overexcited and accidentally licked a crystalline being, causing half of its outer shell to dissolve. In Rex's defense, the alien did, in fact, taste like a giant salt lick. Then there was Emily's ball python. During a class on proper dining etiquette across the galaxy, Emily's pet, sensing the hovering Orican professor, decided that the professor looked an awful lot like a large egg and tried to consume him. It took 3 hours, a tub of alien butter, and a team of engineers to extricate the professor from the snake's tight coils. But for every mistake, there were small victories, like the time Mr. Snuggles, while lounging on a trembling Floyan's lap, purred so loudly that the Floyan, unable to control his delight, exclaimed, "It vibrates. How charming." Of course, the fact that the Floyan passed out from sheer terror moments later was conveniently ignored in the post-presentation summary. As the semester unfolded, the DIXH program expanded its course offerings to include essential subjects like, No, Your Classmate is Not Emergency Rations, A Guide to Interspecies Dining, The Art of Not Terrifying Your Alien Neighbors, and the much-needed So You've Accidentally Conquered a Planet, Diplomatic Solutions for the Accidental Warlord. True to form, the human students approached these classes with a mix of fervor, sarcasm, and a stunning disregard for their own safety. "I still don't get it," Sarah remarked one day during their Galactic Perceptions of Predators seminar. "Mr. Snuggles sleeps for 20 hours a day. How is that terrifying?" Professor Zill, who had unfortunately drawn the short straw and was tasked with teaching the class, trembled as he tried to explain. Miss Johnson, Zill Zill quivered. It's not about what your cat does most of the time. It's about what it's capable of during those other 4 hours. Jake interjected, but that's what makes it fun. You never know when they'll suddenly switch from adorable fluffball to apex predator. Keeps you on your toes. The professor shuddered in what could only be described as a full-body cringe. That is precisely the problem, Mr. Martinez. Most species prefer their excitement to come from less lethal sources. Like what? Carlos asked, genuinely curious. Fluffy the tarantula sat perched on his shoulder, mandibles clicking in what the humans had learned to interpret as amusement. Well, Zill began, relieved to be on safer ground. The ethereals from the Whisper Nebula find great joy in watching gases form into new patterns. The chrono species takes pleasure in observing paint drying, something about the concept of time passing. The humans exchanged looks of disbelief mixed with pity. Right? Aisha said slowly, absent-mindedly petting Thumper, who was cheerfully gnawing on a chunk of depleted uranium. That sounds thrilling. Professor Zill Black sighed, a sound resembling air slowly deflating from a particularly sad balloon. The point, students, is that the galaxy is diverse. What one species finds exhilarating, another might consider terrifying, dull, or even tasty. Speaking of tasty, Emily chimed in, her ball python draped around her shoulders like a slithering scarf. Is it true that the gastropods from Slime Prime think W40 is a delicacy? The professor rippled in what the students had learned to recognize as a nod. Yes, indeed, though I'd advise against offering it as a gift. The last diplomatic incident involving lubricants and the gastropods is still being debated in Galactic Court. As the class descended into laughter and absurd questions about alien dining habits, Professor Zill couldn't help but feel a strange pang of, was it affection? Despite the chaos these humans and their pets had caused, with their property damage and the recurrent nightmares they'd given half the faculty, they were endearingly infuriating in their own terrifying way. Meanwhile, in the administrative offices, Dean Xylophone was having a far less pleasant time. He glared at the holographic display in front of him, his xylophone-like form vibrating with stress. You can't be serious, he chimed, the high-pitched sound of his voice tinged with exasperation as he spoke to the imposing figure on the screen. The Galactic Council is doing what? Ambassador Cathro, an entity composed of pure energy and endless bureaucratic exasperation, flickered in a way that suggested impatience. You heard me, Dean. The Council has decided that the DIXH program is an undeniable success. They want to expand it significantly. Dean Xylophone's keys clattered with alarm. But we've barely kept this small group from inadvertently causing an intergalactic catastrophe. How are we supposed to manage a larger program? Cathro's energy form pulsed in what might have been a sigh if energy could sigh. The Council believes that the key to true galactic harmony lies in embracing our differences. And apparently, nothing brings those differences into sharper focus like humans and their pets. So what exactly are they proposing? The Dean asked, already bracing himself for the worst. A full-scale cultural exchange program, Cathro announced. We're sending aliens to live with human families on Earth, and more humans and their pets will be brought to academies all over the galaxy. A stunned silence followed as Dean Xylophone absorbed this revelation. Finally, in a response that would have made his human students proud, he uttered the only thing that seemed appropriate. Well, shit. The news about the program's expansion spread through the academy with the speed of wildfire, though for the Sistoni, it spread like a particularly juicy bit of kindling. As expected, the human students were ecstatic. This is going to be epic, Jake exclaimed, ruffling Rex's fur. The giant dog's tail wagged so hard that it created a small sonic boom. Just think about all the new friends we'll make, Sarah, smiling widely with Mr. Snuggles purring in her arms, agreed. I'm so excited to show everyone back home how amazing alien cultures are, but do you think they'll let me bring Mr. Snuggles to other planets? I'm sure he'd love to chase some extraterrestrial mice. The mere thought of releasing Earth's apex predators onto unsuspecting alien worlds caused several nearby xenobiology professors to faint on the spot. As the preparations for the expanded program began, the academy was plunged into a frenzy of activity. New habitats were built to accommodate the varied needs of incoming alien students. The cafeteria expanded its menu to offer everything from liquid nitrogen smoothies to specialized photosynthesis booths. The human students dived into the preparations with vigor, their pets always at their sides. Emily's ball python proved surprisingly helpful, slithering into tight spaces to assist with new piping installations. Fluffy the tarantula used her web-spinning skills to create ultra-durable, lightweight materials for the alien habitats. Even Thumper found his niche. His astonishing chewing ability was put to good use breaking down and recycling tough alien waste materials. The sight of Thumper, the fluffy white rabbit. Reducing a piece of indestructible alien alloy to scrap never failed to trigger an existential crisis in the nearby extraterrestrial onlookers. As the grand exchange day approached, anticipation and nervous energy filled the air in equal measure. The humans were hard at work preparing for their trips to distant worlds, making sure they had all the essentials: extra pet food, chew toys that wouldn't accidentally tear holes in the space-time continuum, and a generous supply of allergy medications for any aliens sensitive to Earth's dander. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, alien families were bracing for the arrival of their human guests, balancing curiosity with mild panic. The Gatus blob family from Uza Prime reinforced their entire home with a non-stick coating, just in case their human guest brought along one of those cat creatures prone to shedding. The Photosynthians from Chlorophyll 4 stocked up on what they hoped were suitable human foods, filling their shelves with a wide variety of rocks and minerals based on their research into what humans ate. Someone really needed to update the galactic Wikipedia entry on Earth cuisine. The night before the grand exchange was set to begin, Dean Xylophone called for an emergency meeting with his staff. "Esteemed colleagues, fellow sentients," he began, his tone serious. "Tomorrow marks the beginning of a journey that could either lead to a new era of galactic cooperation, or plunge us into a chaos we cannot even imagine." Professor Zill Black raised a pseudopod. "With all due respect, Dean, haven't we been living in chaos ever since the humans arrived?" There was a murmur of agreement from the faculty. Dean Xylophone's keys rattled in acknowledgement. "True, but tomorrow that chaos will extend far beyond our own walls. Our human students will be unleashed upon unsuspecting alien worlds, and in return, we will welcome a diverse array of extraterrestrial students into our academy. Is it too late to retire?" A voice piped up from the back, sounding oddly like Professor Neutronium's. The dean, ever diplomatic, ignored it. "I know we've had our challenges with the humans and their companions. We've endured property damage, nightmares, and, in some cases, developed new phobias," he continued. "But I want you to remember something important. Despite it all, these humans have brought something invaluable to our academy." "Unimaginable terror?" Professor Neutronium muttered. "No," Dean Xylophone chimed firmly. "They've brought life, energy, a reminder that the universe is vast and unpredictable, and yes, sometimes terrifying. But that's why we're all here, isn't it? To learn, to expand our horizons, to challenge what we thought we knew." A brief, thoughtful silence settled over the room. Then the dean added with a mischievous tone, "Besides, think about how dull this place was before they arrived." Laughter rippled through the room, and for a moment, Dean Xylophone felt a surge of optimism. Yes, tomorrow would bring challenges, and there would likely be property damage on a galactic scale. But for the first time, he felt hopeful. The humans had changed the academy in ways no one could have predicted, and the journey ahead, however wild it might be, was something to look forward to. Yes, there would undoubtedly be incident reports filling up for the next century. But this was also the beginning of something truly extraordinary, an authentic blending of cultures, an opportunity for the galaxy to witness humanity and their cherished pets in all their complexity, a species of contradictions capable of immense affection and formidable savagery, often at the same time. As the meeting concluded and the faculty drifted out, each wrapped in their own contemplations about the coming days, Dean Xylophone found himself humming an unfamiliar tune. It was a melody from Earth, one he'd overheard from the human students, something about letting the dogs out. Tomorrow, though, it wouldn't be just the dogs that were let out. The cats, the rabbits, the tarantulas, and who knew what else would follow. In exchange, the Academy would host beings from across the galaxy, each with their own distinct worldviews, and perhaps a few extra limbs. Promised to be one unforgettable semester. When dawn broke over the Interstellar Academy of Sciences and Arts, casting its dazzling, multi-hued rays across the now heavily fortified campus, Dean Xylophone stood at his office window. From there, he watched the first of the transport ships descend, releasing a vibrant mix of alien species onto the quad. At the same time, he saw the human students gather, each one accompanied by their pets, eagerly preparing for the journey ahead. Sarah was struggling to get Mr. Snuggles into a cat carrier, the feline looking as though he found the whole process beneath him. Jake, on the other hand, was doing his best to control Rex, who appeared convinced that the incoming ships were the ultimate playthings. Dean Xylophone chuckled to himself. Here we go. He turned away from the window and made his way down to greet the newcomers, his steps creating a rhythmic clink on the metal floors. As he walked, he couldn't help but smile, a smile as close as his xylophone nature allowed. After all, if there was one thing the humans had taught him, it was this. Sometimes the most daunting things in life can turn out to be the most rewarding. And who could say, perhaps by the end of this exchange, the sight of a dog wouldn't send half the galaxy scrambling for cover. Of course, considering how Rex was currently engaging in what appeared to be an enthusiastic game of tag with a newly arrived gaseous entity, dispersing it across the entire quad. Well, maybe that dream was a bit too ambitious. But therein lay the beauty of it all. In a universe teeming with diverse species, countless worlds, and infinite ways of life, there was always something new to discover, something that could surprise even the most seasoned beings. And if that something happened to be a 180-pound Rottweiler with an affinity for chasing sentient clouds of gas, or a fluffy white rabbit that could chew through the hull of a starship, well, that was just another typical day in the great, chaotic, and wondrous experiment of galactic cooperation. As Dean Xylophone stepped into the brisk morning air, ready to greet the first wave of alien exchange students, he felt a wave of excitement. Yes, there would be obstacles. Yes, misunderstandings were inevitable. And yes, the insurance premiums for the entire sector were about to rise exponentially. But there would also be camaraderie, newfound understanding, and, judging by the humans' enthusiasm, likely a surge in interstellar pet adoption by the end of the year. "Welcome," Dean Xylophone bellowed, his voice echoing across the quad, "to the Interstellar Academy of Sciences and Arts. Let the adventure begin." And with that, the great galactic pet exchange kicked off in earnest. May the universe have mercy on them all.